What is the relationship between addiction and cognitive dissonance? In this video, I'm going to dive deep according to my own experience in this whole realm of addiction and cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance is when a person holds two conflicting beliefs or values within themselves. So it's kind of like we're basically at war with ourselves. It's when our words don't match our actions. When we say we want this, but we actually reach for that. When we say we are doing this, but in reality, we are doing that. The great Rudolf Steiner called this story gap the percept-concept gap. The percept-concept gap is when our perception does not match reality. When there is a gap between our perception of reality and how reality always actually is. Just because we think there is a snake about to bite us, when in actuality it's a coiled hose, would be an example of a gap between our perception and reality. Just because we think someone is attacking us by some phrase they said when no one else in the room perceived that as a threat except for you, that is a percept-concept gap. Or also, all our triggers are signs of this percept-concept gap. Anytime our actions don't align with who we say we are, who we believe we are, there is a story gap. There is cognitive dissonance. There is this conflict within us between two opposing beliefs, between two opposing values. So the greater this gap between our perception and reality is such a broad term, because the truth is, the more we learn about quantum physics, about ourselves, about our biology, reality is constantly expanding for us as we grow in consciousness. As we continue to grow in awareness, reality is always shifting and changing. But there are some things that, we can at least conclude to be as close to our perception of reality as possible. Just because we are perceiving something a certain way does not mean that is reality, although it will affect our entire reality because of what we are perceiving. The greater this story gap, the greater this percept-concept gap is, the more disconnected from ourselves we are, the more disconnected from truth we are, the more misaligned from what is truth, what is real, is gonna play against us. So likewise, you could say the greater this gap, the greater the gap between ourselves and the way of the cosmos. The greater the gap between ourselves and what other people would call God, all of creation, the universe, whatever you want to call it. So typically there are 5 major symptoms of cognitive dissonance. Number 1 is insanity. So insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And I have to be clear that insanity doesn't just begin with a person who is suffering from cognitive dissonance. This is the culture of our society, the culture of how the world has been presented to us. There is a cognitive dissonance in the way corporate entities are affecting our lives, in the way things are happening behind the scenes and we're being brainwashed to look the other way. cognitive dissonance is in the background of the world. So it affects our families, it affects generations, it affects our behavior, it affects our thoughts, our words, our actions on deep, deep levels. And it's not an excuse to keep it perpetuating, but it gives us the opportunity to do something about it. It gives us the opportunity to wake up to what is real and what is true. And there's a fine, fine line between insanity and consistency. There's a fine, fine line between insanity and perseverance. And I'm not someone that can define that for you. You have to reflect on your own life and really be relentlessly honest with yourself. Be brutally honest with yourself, whether or not your thoughts, actions, behaviors, and the debts that you've been acquiring or paying off are proving to be insanity, or is it proving to be consistency and perseverance? Is it proving to be discipline? Because there's such a fine, fine line that we can bullshit ourselves, especially if we are cognitive dissonant. We can bullshit ourselves thinking that perseverance and consistency is what is happening. But in reality, if we were to remove the phobia tinted glasses, the broken glasses we're looking out through the world, if we were to remove it, we would see that it's actually insanity. But I can't decide this for you. I can't tell you whether or not you're operating in this realm. This is something you have to come to realization with yourself. Number 2, self-betrayal, self-sabotage. This is one of the most easiest signs to see whether or not a person is operating or suffering from this state of cognitive dissonance, where there is a story gap. Continuing to do things that harm us, continuing to engage in relationships with people or things that are continually harming us, putting us in a debt with mental, emotional, or physical health, putting us in a state of dis-ease consistently over decades. This is something to really pay attention to. Many of us, almost all of the world, we all engage in some kind of activity where we know it's not good for us, but we continue to do it anyway. I don't think it's a bad thing if it's not putting us in some kind of debt with our health, wealth, love, or joy. And again, when I'm talking about love, it's not sabotaging or negatively impacting the people we really care about, our family, our friends, our children. If it's not negatively impacting them, or if it's not acquiring some kind of debt with our health, if it's not acquiring actual financial debt that cannot be stopped, that seems almost impossible to stop, if it's not doing those things, then, every once in a while, we'll go and have fun, because sometimes doing fun things are very risky and can cause harm. But, there are levels to things. There are definite poisons, and there are things that can be poison if we take it into excess. For example, like sugar or desserts. It's not a bad thing, but if we don't understand and we cannot regulate ourselves, if we cannot put a boundary around ourselves to say that, okay, now that's too much, then it becomes a poison. But on the other hand, there are things that are just absolutely toxic. There are things in ingredients, because of these corporations that are just absolutely poison to us and we don't even know, or we don't want to believe it. That's a sign of cognitive dissonance, where we don't want to look at it, don't want to really truly acknowledge the damage it's causing, and we continue to do it anyway. This is cognitive dissonance, where we are engaging in these activities, where we know this relationship is so toxic and so bad for our health, so bad for our children, so bad for the example it sets for our loved ones and our children and generations to come, yet we continue to engage in it. This is cognitive dissonance, where we know we need to rest, but we continue to go, where we know we're developing a debt in health, but we don't actually want to acknowledge it. This is cognitive dissonance. And again, this is a state of deep, deep suffering. This is a state of deep, deep suffering and anguish. Number 3, denial. Denial of the hurt we are causing, denial of the debt we are acquiring, whether it's the debt in health, mental, emotional, physical health, wealth, or finances, whether it's a debt in love. And when I mean by a debt in love, I'm talking about negatively impacting people we care about, whether it be our children, whether it be influencing them in ways that will be destructive for them, that will be imprisoning for them, our spouse, our family members. So that's what I mean when I say a debt in love. Or there will be a debt in our simple sense of joy, our ability to just be content and happy living life, our ability to just find joy in the simple things in life. There will be a great debt acquired the further this gap, the greater the cognitive dissonance. To the degree we cannot see life as a gift and more of a burden, continually over and over and over, eventually we will have to wake up and take responsibility that we may be in a state of cognitive dissonance. Number 4, survival. Typically, people who are in a state of cognitive dissonance are living in an unconscious state of survival. The phobias are predominantly running their life in the background, unconsciously and subconsciously. Phobias are tinting their perception to where they don't even realize that it is tinting their perception of reality. And this cognitive dissonance, it's a mechanism of survival. It helped us survive painful times, traumatic times, unbearable pain. But in the long run, this survival mentality or this cognitive dissonance is detrimental to our health and is exactly the mechanism that acquires these debts in health, wealth, love, and joy. And number 5, pride. Pride is mostly a killer. You know, there's a spectrum of pride. There's a pride where we take pride in our work, where we take pride in our craft, and we are thoughtful, and we do our best to provide the best possible service to humanity and our loved ones. You know, we take pride. But I'm not talking about that kind of pride. I'm talking about the pride that is absolutely terrified of being wrong. I'm talking about the pride that is absolutely terrified of being wrong. Being wrong in these instances is unconsciously defined as being unsafe, making us feel insecure, inadequate. So with this cognitive dissonance and this ongoing percept-concept gap, there is this survival need to make sense out of being wrong, to try and make the person who is dissonant seem right. So we'll go to great lengths when we are in cognitive dissonance, and we can be in cognitive dissonance within different areas of our life. It'll affect every area of our life because we are dissonant in one area of our life, but we can be primarily dissonant in the aspect of love, like health or wealth, finances, or love, or our ability to relate to ourselves. We can be dissonant in any of these areas. And if we are terrified of being wrong, and we have made highly likely a very bad choice, considering the decades and decades of debt we've acquired in health, wealth, love, or joy, we will go to great lengths, delusional lengths, because we are still viewing the world through broken, tinted, traumatized glasses. We will go to great lengths to make ourselves seem right. We will try to make up a story, create and fabricate a story within ourselves, about the world, to be right about the mistake we've made. We will go to great lengths to make and justify, or basically we'll go to great lengths to justify our wrong, poor decisions. And we will use everything and anything in the world to back up our mistake, to back it up and justify it. But the problem with this is, including all cognitive dissonance, all story gaps, all percept concept gaps, is it's unsustainable to live this way. This is the reason we are acquiring a debt in health, wealth, love, or joy, is because it is not lining up with reality. And we will go to great lengths. We will exhaust ourselves. We will continue to be in fight or flight, and fight and fight and fight, and try to prove that, this mistake is right, or that this lie, what some religious people would call the devil's lie, is right or is correct. So it's unsustainable, and this is what acquires such a great debt in our health, wealth, love, and or joy. But it's the pride, the terror of being wrong that keeps us imprisoned in this matrix that limits us. It is the very cage we fabricate for ourselves. But it served the purpose when it was born, because it helped us survive and escape unbearable pain. But it becomes a prison. And these 5 things are things I'm just trying to shed light on to help you free your mind. Cognitive dissonance, this is just a state of human condition. It doesn't matter whether you're a Christian, whether you're an atheist, whether you're political, apolitical, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, or man or woman or non-binary or whatever. This state of cognitive dissonance does not discriminate, and it moves and exists throughout all dimensions of being human. all dimensions. It doesn't matter whether or not you are spiritual or not spiritual, because cognitive dissonance exists in both realms. Cognitive dissonance, this story gap, exists in all realms. It doesn't matter. This is just the state of the human condition. But where it's really important to pay close attention, because your life depends on it, and the life of those around you that you love depend on it, is where you are acquiring a debt, an increasing, insatiable debt in health, wealth, love, and or joy. I call it the big four of life. The big four of life: health, wealth, love, and or joy. Mental, emotional, physical health, finances, positively or negatively impacting those we love: children, family members, friends, loved ones, team members, business partners. And whether or not we're acquiring a debt and just being able to live joyously, being able to live a fulfilling life where we see life as a gift. It's important to pay attention to where you are acquiring these debts, because these debts will really point to where the cognitive dissonance is most severe and where you might want to really start making changes. So what I learned when I encounter cognitive dissonance, which is always tied to all severe addictions. And again, I'm going to touch on addiction, because addiction is not just substances. People can be addicted to feeling superior because it gives them a sense of safety. It gives them a sense of self-worth when they have low self-esteem. When someone has a deep underlying fear of insecurity, inadequacy, or scarcity, it's natural to be addicted to people pleasing, to gain validation, to feel like they are valuable. It's easy to get addicted to work, to escape problems at home or problems within. You know, it's like the second we become still, it's this whole unfolding of what we don't want to feel. You know, addiction can be addiction to, of course, the hardcore substances. It can be porn, it can be sex, it can be food, it can be sugar, it can be toxic relationships, it can be drama. People are addicted to drama, addicted to gossiping, because they don't want to focus on themselves. It takes the eye off of their own problems and they get to point at other people's problems for a while. So people can be addicted to drama. People can be addicted to anything, really. So what I realized about cognitive dissonance, the story gap with people, this percept concept gap with people, is that no amount of arguing, no amount of debating, no amount of evidence, whether I had a whole ship container full of evidence to present to someone with cognitive dissonance, to show them why they're in cognitive dissonance, will ever snap someone out of that state of being. No amount of arguing, of debating, of evidence will force someone out of their cognitive dissonance. There are only 4 things I've found that will help someone get out of their own cognitive dissonance. First and foremost, though, which is not a part of the form I'm about to label, is that divine timing plays a critical role. The point in which they are in their life, and again, it goes back to that quote where change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. when this stage and this point is what's happening in a person's life, it's possible for cognitive dissonance to finally begin to unravel and dissipate. But these four things I've found are what encourage this collapse of the story gap, which encourage the collapse of cognitive dissonance. And first, it's compassion. Compassion for yourself if you are in cognitive dissonance, compassion for others who are in cognitive dissonance, because we have to remember this is a deep state of suffering. This is a deep state of being so traumatized by pain, unbearable pain. So compassion for yourself, for, it was a very natural, intelligent part of our own human survival to develop this cognitive dissonance. It's what preserved us to a certain extent. It's what helped us survive some horrific situations and experiences. So compassion for yourself, and understanding that in people who are addicted, addicts. I know there's a lot of people that look down on addicts and are always shaming addicts and thinking like, why don't you just fucking stop? We need to understand, like, if you can't understand the severity of why they can't stop, you also have to understand the severity of the pain they went through. Like, you can't understand the pain they went through. You can't understand the trauma they've experienced. So compassion is the first one. Number two is patience. Being patient with yourself, because unraveling and collapsing cognitive dissonance and addressing the story gap, closing that story gap, it takes time. It takes time to grow. It takes time to process pain that they never processed. It takes patience. So being patient with others who are going through that, and being patient with yourself. And when I say patient, patience is not the same as enabling. When you are in direct relationship with a person who is suffering from cognitive dissonance, patience is not always saying, okay, continue your addiction, or doing things to accommodate their addiction and let it continue, doing things for people so they don't learn. When I say patience, I mean understand that there is divine timing, and just trusting that that time will come. The third one I'm about to say is related to patience, especially if you're in a relationship with someone who is suffering from addiction and cognitive dissonance. And that's boundaries. Boundaries are not for the other person. Boundaries are always for ourselves, where we tell ourselves that beyond this boundary, I will begin to acquire a debt in either health, wealth, love, or joy. Beyond this boundary is detrimental for me, and I will not be able to serve in this world to the best of my ability. Beyond this boundary is hurtful to me and everyone around me because of how it puts me in debt. So boundaries, when it comes to patience, is you can be patient with people, but you also have to set a boundary for yourself and let and trust that the cosmos will take care of this person. You can pray for this person, and when it comes to quantum physics, for people who don't believe in spirituality, we all know that there is a unified field in quantum physics and everything is connected. Entanglement theory. So when I say prayer, this is not a woo-woo thing. This is actually scientifically proven. This is where we've come in life. This is where reality has come. Where the reality of prayer is that it can help people. It can help someone. And also trusting. This is going to exercise our strength to trust. So stepping out of the danger zone with people who are destructive, with people who will put you in debt, with activities or substances that will put you in debt. Boundaries is for yourself. It's where you tell yourself that if I step beyond this boundary, if I continue to enable this behavior, this toxic, destructive behavior with this person in my life, I will also acquire the same debt that they're in. And that's the power of association. So boundaries, developing boundaries are critical to thrive. They are critical to living a joyful life. They are critical to not going and acquiring a debt in the big four of life. And the fourth one that people with cognitive dissonance need, and that we all need, is humility. Humility is what makes all things possible. It's what makes transformation possible. Our ability to learn, to grow, to transform, to change our mind, to change our behavior, to move from a place of dysfunctional relationship to a place of functional, healthy relationship, all is related to humility. It's all related to humility. Our ability to alchemize darkness into light, to turn the worst of situations into the best thing that ever happened to us, is humility. The only way we will get out of a state of cognitive dissonance, to get out of that denial, to get out of this loop of insanity, to stop betraying ourselves, to stop self-sabotaging ourselves, to break this prison of pride, which is fear-based, it's humility. Humility allows so many possibilities to unlock. Humility is foundational to transformation. So when you come across someone who is suffering from addiction or cognitive dissonance, just remember these four things and it'll help you navigate this world so you continue to thrive and you don't rob people from the lessons they need to learn on their own. You don't rob people, you don't exhaust yourself, you don't go into debt in health, wealth, love, and or joy. I know this will help someone depending on whether or not you're in this stage where the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. All right, peace.